Hello, good morning. Thank you for your presentations. I work for the city of Utrecht, and I was wondering if, Naomi, this question is for you, if you've looked at the specific advantages of a cargo bike in these 4 cities compared to light electric vehicles that are not pedal powered. Because in a sense, you could achieve space-wise the same advantages. But of course, it's different what you can do with a cargo bike versus a light electric vehicle in each different city. Is that a clear question? Your microphone is off.
Now?
Hello. Yeah. Okay, thanks for your question. So yeah, for the study before, for the space for cargo bikes, we really looked into the actual cargo bikes, the pedaled driven ones. And for this comparison study, we did not focus specifically on a type of cargo bikes. We more looked at the organizational way. So as a municipality, how can you make a strategy to support smaller vehicles in logistics? So I would say it's not just into the cargo bikes, and as Giacomo mentioned, it's good to have a more holistic view on mobility and to not look only into the specifics of one cargo bike, because you see a lot of differences. Like last year, it was already another type of cargo bike. So the development of the types is really fast, is changing really fast. So you shouldn't make a policy based on one type of measurement of a cargo bike, because it will change next year. So it's important to have your mind open into new possibilities of cargo bikes as well. So don't focus only on the cargo bike, but also focus on the other types. That's, I think, really important for a longer-term strategy for a municipality. And what we saw in the study, when we interviewed the municipality of Groningen, is that they said they wouldn't let the cargo bikes specifically on the cycle lane, but they would introduce shared spaces in the whole inner center. So, which means a cargo bike, doesn't matter how it really looks, it will be on the shared space, just like the normal bikes, just like the pedestrians. So if you create a more flexible inner city, then it's also resilient for future changes, I would say. So yeah, don't create a cycle lane specifically for cyclists and cargo bikers, and then in 1 year, oh, the cargo bikes will look differently, and you will have a problem and you need to redesign again.
So in this case that you mentioned, Groningen, there wouldn't be a specific advantage of a cargo bike over a light electric vehicle that is not pedal powered?
I guess so. It depends maybe on if they have regulations for it. But on the street, in space-wise, no, it wouldn't.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Pascal van der Noort. I work for Villa Mondiale. First, of course, I would like to congratulate Karen for a wonderful overview that she gave. But my question goes to the man in the middle. Whenever, there's only one man, so I should not have said the middle. For the man, whenever you plan, it sounds all very beautiful and gorgeous and elegant and charming. But what I always miss in every allocation like this is the pedestrian. What would change your vision if you would have to not hinder pedestrians? Would that alter your result in the end?
Hello. Okay. Yeah, we haven't left out the pedestrian in the schemes. We were focusing on one of the aspects, but one of the modes and players that are on the street, which in this case it would be the last mile logistics. But yeah, of course, the pedestrian, we have to deal with them as well first, especially nowadays. You heard probably all the concepts of like 15-minute city, or like trying to realize cities about proximity and being more compact, where people can reach easily on foot and bike all the functions that they need. But still, at the same time, we need to start thinking about the pedestrian not on a sheltered and dedicated space like the sidewalk, but more of a part of a shared space, I think. Like there is not enough space in some city street to have a dedicated space only for pedestrians. You disagree? I see.
Of course I disagree.
Yeah.
Does it work? Yeah. Of course I disagree, because whatever you say is, when you say shared space, you mean bugger off, we need it. So there is then the space of the pedestrians being taken. And so whenever politicians say pedestrian first, then cyclist, public transport, and then the car, then that's the statement, and then they start forgetting about the pedestrian.
Yeah, maybe now that just thinking loud, but I think we have very, very precise standards and regulations for cars, for instance. So when you design a street as an urban designer, for instance, often you approach it like from the car perspective, because there are very precise rules about it. You know how wide it has to be, the turning radius, etc. For pedestrian, we don't have that. So the standards are much more fluid, and that causes also the fact that we can easily lose control over them. So often they are relegated to a very narrow portion of the street. Before I was living in Portugal, a country where, for example, the sidewalks often are very, very tiny because it's just the leftover space. So what we advocate also in the designs of public space is also not start from the middle, but start from the buildings and walk your way through the middle of the street. So start from giving proper space, attach it to the functions and the activities that happen also in the buildings. But then, of course, on a narrow existing city street, the space is still limited. So you need to think about other solutions, approach the problem from a bigger picture. For instance, reducing the speed of the vehicles in the cities. So you see the effects of like reducing to 30 kilometers per hour in the center of many also Dutch cities is very positive, but you should reduce it even less, because immediately the safety for the pedestrian is much higher. So I think, probably we need also stricter standards for pedestrian movement.
That would be wonderful for you to design.
Yeah.
And when doing that, I would suggest to think of eliminating the sidewalk. Forget about it, and then find out how you deal with pedestrians.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what we meant with shared space, but
Hi, thank you. My name is Jason Meggs. My question is for Karen Vancluysen of POLIS. Karen, I wish we had such a clear, sensible voice in the United States, where I'm now based. I work internationally, but for more than 10 years, I've been trying to get cargo bikes on the map, first in California, which was leading the nation on climate policy, then federally and nationally. And there's this car craze. We're going to drive our way out of climate change with big batteries and more cars, always more growth. And I wonder, do you ever talk to the USA? Could you come make a speech maybe? Or do you have any advice? I'd love to see a rapid change like in Brussels. So much opportunity. It's incredible. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we do talk to the United States. We even have an American member at the Open Mobility Foundation. We have some representatives in the room as well who are engaging with them. And we see that there is less of a regulatory tradition, let's say, for public authorities to step in to the extent that local authorities are doing here. Happy to come over. I will be in Washington in January at TRB as well. And I think what NACTO is doing in the US is also very similar to what we are trying to do with POLIS in Europe. But it doesn't happen overnight. David Zipper, I'm sure you know him as a journalist in the US, was asking me, how can I tell the story of what's happening in Europe in a way that it would resonate in the US? And that's where I also brought in the case of Brussels, because otherwise, indeed, you guys would say Amsterdam, Copenhagen, out of our league. We can't even think about it. But it does require, a tradition of change and regulatory intervention. Otherwise, we're not going to get there. And I know that the car is still even way more predominant in the US than it currently is also in Europe. But I liked what you were saying, that also regulation is pushing innovation. I've been having so many conversations with the car industry where they told me it's not about policy, it's about technology. And what you are proposing is communism. I was like, what? Okay, I'm talking about an old school German engineer now, but you still have them, and more than you would think. And I told them, if it wasn't for policy, we would still be smoking in this room. We would be throwing our trash on the streets, and you would still be producing dirty diesel cars. So policy needs to steer also innovation. Like you said, zero emission zones create and build a case for cargo bikes or other solutions. And that's really, I think, where the political leaders will have to step up, because if there is no sense of urgency today, then when will it be there? Again, there was an article in the news this morning that we're so far off from what we agreed on in Paris back at that COP. There's another COP coming up, and we're moving towards a 3-degree increase of temperature. So, yeah, I don't know anymore what we need to do to make that sense of urgency, be felt also by the political leaders. And as I said, Brussels is an interesting case, but also the minister needed police protection. We just had local elections in Belgium, and many politicians that had stepped up when it comes to mobility have been punished by the voters. So I'm not going to pretend it's an easy story either in Europe, but yeah, we just need to push through. And it might sound like a cliche, but political leadership is really what we need to make that transition and to push that transformation. And public-private sector cooperation. Really, we need to jointly fight for the cause. And yeah, but happy to come over.
So the whole orchestra can play together.
Exactly.
We hear the beautiful music.
Thank you so much. Someone else?
Hello, name's Steve. Lovely presentation. Thank you for all the insights. This is more of a general question for, I guess, all three of you, because cargo bikes as a concept does not exist in my country. I do come from the third world, but as soon as I came here, I was taken aback. I was like, oh, wow, this is a great concept. And utilizing a cargo bike to do the deliveries is a great idea. But one thing that the Netherlands at least doesn't have is great weather. So from the standing of somebody who is going to be an operator of the cargo bike, the delivery guy essentially, who has to work through the rain, through the heat, through the snow, what would be your solutions to essentially those shared spaces that would be closed off to the vans and cars, which is, as I understand, the plan for the future? How would those problems be approached? Because we do not want the operators of the cargo bikes and delivery guys soaking wet in the rain, I guess, and similarly bad weather conditions. I guess that's it.
Where do you come from?
Serbia.
Oh, okay.
Well, we thought the same, that delivery people would hate the rain. But when we had the interview with the cargo bike person who is delivering, who has this business from it, he mentioned that a lot of employees actually do like to work when it's raining, but they do not like to work when it's sunny. Because when it's nice weather, they want to do something else. They want to go to the beach, or they want to swim, or they want to have fun with friends in a park or something. So whenever it was raining, they actually didn't care that much about it. So there was really like, they provide rain jackets and clothes for them, and it wasn't too bad. So I can imagine if it's snowing and if there's ice, then it's different. But it's not as simple as you think, that people don't work when it's raining.
Oh, no. Sorry, Giacomo. One moment. It's not that they don't work, they have to continue working. And my question was, what would be the solution to those situations in the spaces where the vans and delivery vehicles of bigger proportions would not be allowed?
Yeah, so provide facilities, I guess, like rain jackets, but also so a distributional hub could provide a shower or a changing facility. You could create spaces. Maybe even cargo bikes will be adjusted to the different contexts. If you have a colder climate, then create a cargo bike with heaters on the arms or maybe a roof on top of it. The sector is really developing quickly to these different contexts, actually. So, yeah.
I just wanted to actually remark also what you said that it's. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Can you. This aspect that you're raising, like the human aspect of the labor involved in the sector, it's very important, and I think it's still quite underrated. It's developing, but because we realize spaces and infrastructure which are really directed to optimizing logistics, but still not enough all the spaces to make a decent working condition. Which of course the hubs need to have, for example, a place to grab a coffee or have or just you should have some shelters, not to wait in the rain while, for example, you are waiting for food getting out of a restaurant. So all these things are, I think, are very important in a sector that is growing so fast, and more people are employed in it. So we also, as designers, we have to incorporate it, but also the people that develop these hubs or develop a public space should incorporate also devices to shelter from the weather, among the other things. So really focusing on the human aspect of the last mile logistics. Thank you.
If I could add to that, well, the Dutch would say there is no such thing as bad weather. There's only bad clothing. And if you see that cycling generally, and not talking about the cargo bike in particular, but if you see how popular cycling is in this country, in Belgium, in Scandinavian countries, it shows that the weather is maybe not the most determining factor, because we are not famous for our good weather, unfortunately. But having said that, when we talk about all types of access regulations, there is a wide range of vehicles. I mean, the extremes are maybe the cargo bike, and then you have the big trucks, which have no place in cities. But there's a wide range of alternatives in between that is increasingly being developed as well. Light electric vehicles, which are maybe not a bicycle, but still are suitable for an urban environment and would also address the weather conditions if they would be a challenge in a certain situation. So we also have an increasing number of light electric vehicles coming to the market that could also address that particular challenge and maybe are a bit bigger than or a bit more protected than a cargo bike. But the right vehicle for the right purpose at the right time in the right context, I would say.
Okay, thank you for your answers. They do make quite a bit of sense. I love the idea. Of course, this has to continue improving, but I do find it quite often a bit disturbing that human factor of people who work in the age of innovation, they are left behind and they just have to deal with it. Don't mind me I mean something bad. I have worked in a swap feed, so I have seen what the delivery guys look like in the rain, and yeah, that was just my train of thought. Yeah, thank you again.
Hello, Franklin Jones from City of Portland, Oregon, in the United States. Owner and CEO of Beeline Urban Delivery. We've been using cyclogistics and cargo bikes deliveries for 15 years. So my question to you all, first of all, this is great, wonderful. From an industry perspective, within the very large landscape of last mile delivery and delivery, what delivery or what industry areas are you seeing holding lots of promise for mode shift into cargo bikes and light electric vehicle? We often hear about UPS or FedEx or Amazon shifting, but that's only a relatively small component of a very, very large industry sector. So I'm curious across the panelists, where do you see the greatest opportunity from an industry's perspective to lean in and create more business and opportunity?
Of course, those big companies, they can be movers and shakers because they represent a big critical mass. And in the cooperation that I was referring to between POLIS and ALICE, we have the logistics providers around the table. And it's important to create a public-private partnership to make things happen, but also for cities to create the right framework conditions and to incentivize making that shift from the side of the private sector. What we shouldn't forget about is that when you look at the local ecosystem, there's a lot of small companies that are locally based and that maybe have one van or represent just a few employees. And that's also what we should be looking at. And that's why I think the example of Brussels is interesting, that they have created this Green Deal to also help those smaller businesses make that shift to cleaner city logistics and to subsidize vehicles if needed, or to have other types of incentives that can help make the shift also for the smaller SMEs that are operating a lot in this context. And then, of course, you have the whole area of e-commerce, where we really also need to see how we can help local businesses. And the example of Leuven in Belgium is interesting in that respect, because e-commerce does not only have an impact on transport and the fact that there are so many vans coming into the city, it also has an impact on local businesses, on local retail. And you see that it's increasingly becoming difficult for them to compete with these big players, with e-commerce. So we have many shops that disappear also in our cities. And what Leuven has done is they have introduced an online delivery platform, which is helping local retailers to also make the shift to offering online services next to the shops that they have within the city center. And what the city is doing is help to consolidate the goods and to bundle the goods of these local shops and have them delivered to people's homes through cargo bikes and other light and clean modes of transport. So I think there's really an important role for public sector to play in making that shift happen on the side of the public sector and of the private sector, and not just for the big players that you were referring to.
Picking up on that, and also on the case of Brussels, actually, the problem with the small businesses, we saw a lot of, we partnered with a small psychologistic cooperative in Brussels. There's a lot of potential there, but they don't have the means to deploy some key infrastructure. For example, as I mentioned before, you need micro hubs distributed within like the city ring in order to have a more advantage with cargo bikes than a van. And to do that, a small company can't just start deploying this kind of infrastructure, but it needs the public sector to intervene. In Brussels, for instance, Brussels Mobility, like the Brussels region, is testing a first pilot project with a few micro hubs that are then be shared by different companies. So I think it's a bit of a chicken egg problem. You need you need to start somewhere. So the innovation needs to be coupled with a public sector investment.
Hi, I'm Andrea. Thanks for the inspiring presentation. And I would like to ask, particular to Naomi, because I'm interested about the toolbox, and I'm wondering if there is a quantitative way to prioritize the action, or is more discussed within stakeholders and experts. Because I feel like municipalities that have less culture about cycling, they need more rigid framework where to work for. And second question is there a way to, because the toolbox answer the question what should we do, but is there a way to say also where should we do it? So using GIS data and more something I think is connected to the last part of Giacomo presentation. So where in the city should we locate the hub? Is there a way to choose that, or is more maybe here is okay, or depending on what we find? And that's it.
Well, some of the tools we really made the tool, and for others we didn't. So for example, for the route optimization, we thought of creating the tool with the GIS system where you can where the data is already loaded in it, and you can just add the hubs, for example. but it was too much of an effort to do that already, because it takes quite some time. But I think that would definitely be helpful, because we try to create it in a way that you just input your data or your stakeholders or your steps or your data of the hubs into it, and you get a little bit of an answer to give you an argument. But we did not make the actual tool in GIS, but it would be good to do. And the other question?
Giacomo was about to reply.
Just wanted to add that one of the biggest obstacles in the innovation in this industry is the availability of this data. So where to locate a micro hub, for example, is something you test with practice. For example, partnering with a private company that does the, rides in a neighborhood. But then the data is not available for the public. So the private sector is retaining, protecting their own data. So we found a lot of complications in that, in developing the method, until we had to partner with a large mobility consulting firm, which could provide some figures, you know. So yeah, I think you addressed also this data problem. Public and private sector, this you mentioned like a discrepancy in the data that can be used. So I think that's one of the key things that we need to start sharing.
And digital twins can also help to assess the likely impact of certain interventions and innovations on the ecosystem, and can help to also assess where to best locate such hubs. There's been a European project called LEAD that has been using this technology to help cities determine the location as well. But this digital divide is indeed there as well.
Yeah, thanks.
Someone else? Yeah.
Hi, this is Jason Meggs again. I just want to express that in the world of cargo bikes, my interest, of course, is how can we stop polluting, and how can we have a more friendly, beautiful cityscape, more human scale, etc. I often hear people have one perspective, like we're looking at delivery, for example, or we're looking, but we should be thinking very distinctly about the different sectors, and I want to hear any thoughts on that. We have families, huge potential. In Europe, you see, like here in Netherlands, you see people taking their kids. This is actually starting to happen in the USA more. You also have the municipal use, where you can pick up the trash, you can clean things, then you have the service, people who just go to clean houses, or an electrician. And there can be special bikes designed for these different uses. So I think it's really important in the discussion that we just keep an open mind. Many times we were just thinking one thing, and actually we should think everything. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, no, we definitely need this integrated approach. That's why we also advocate for these sustainable urban mobility plans, which really look at this integrated approach and how different measures, but also different target groups and different types of use can come together and all be addressed. And then ideally, we should also come to a situation where at some point we combine city logistics and goods transport with passenger transport, and also capitalize on using public transport to transport packages and so on. And there we really also still have to make that step change. But yeah, it's a process that takes time. But also in order to, in any case, accelerate the shift to more sustainable modes, we also really need to internalize the external cost of polluting traffic. And we are still indirectly, massively subsidizing polluting car traffic, and that should change. It's when also people will feel it in their wallets, and the different target groups we're talking about feel the cost of pollution, that they will start to seriously consider alternatives.
You mentioned before that you have a challenge in the US in getting people using cargo bike more. I think the key is exactly what you're saying. So offering a much broader scenario of what life can be if you use, for instance, cargo bike and other vehicles. Because also the American city sold the dream of a certain type of lifestyle in the 50s, and that was linked to a certain type of mobility, which was the car. That's why I don't believe so much in electrification of cars and autonomous vehicles, because I think they will just continue the same model. But so let's try to maybe our task as designers try to build scenarios of how the city looks like if you don't use the car anymore, but you're using the cargo bike or you walk more. So there are attempts like the 50-minute cities I mentioned. This is not new. It's just a way to describe how your life can change and can be if you use a certain type of mobility. So linking always with all the other aspects of your life. I like your presentation because it says a day in the life of a cargo biker. I think that's a very nice storytelling tool to visualize that.
Thank you so much. As a wrap up, I'm gonna just ask the last question for the three of you. So my question, we have talked about challenges, right? Like the role of the public and private partnerships, also the logistics hubs and how it can be financed. And also our latest news in the Netherlands is like we have now the parliament, the Dutch parliament, asking for a delay of the Dutch zero emission zones. So if you have to choose one challenge to tackle, which one would it be? Like the most urgent one from your experience and perspective.
Populism, I would say. Because what is really dangerous and what is really slowing down the acceleration that we currently need is that the climate story is becoming a story of left versus right. That scientific evidence doesn't matter anymore. Fake news is out there. That politicians sometimes use transport as a way to gain votes. And they say, if you vote for me, I will postpone the low emission zone. But air pollution is not going away. They will have to pay several millions of fines because they're not respecting air quality targets as they've been set on the European level. And this whole populist jargon, and I'm sure the Americans can relate to that with the upcoming elections as well, is really a threat to making the move that we really need to move forward today. And mobility is a very contested topic and is really suffering from that.
Yeah, if you focus on the wrong problems and the politics doesn't help to really actually see what the problems on the world are. And for me, one of the big challenges today in cities is to debunk this myth of endless growth. So we should really start working with existing cities with what we have and stop using new resources. So, well, that goes beyond just the mobility question, but in our case, goes also down to the adapting public space to the new needs that are in the city. Logistics is one, but also biodiversity is a very important one, and water management and so on. So working with what we have and using the local resources. I think this is one of the biggest challenges.
Yeah. Difficult question, but I guess I agree with Karin. We need a difficult question is we need to think about the long-term planning, and it feels like right now it's only short-term arguments and indeed getting the audience with you and just saying stuff that is not even, you cannot even apply that in a situation. And yeah, we need to also with our water management, we need to have long-term planning because we have challenges that are coming, and if we just keep on winning voters, then we won't accomplish in our challenges.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your insights and your experience with all of us. For you, audience, keep the conversation in person or digitally on the social media because we need people talking about these challenges that we have.